Hello, Namo Buddhaya. Good evening. Welcome to the Dharma TV English program. I am Karen Tan. Today, we have on our program a wonderful sermon by a popular preacher. And we also have a good piece of music from wayfarers. We also have a Dhammapada sermon. Now we begin our program with a popular and respected Buddhist monk from the USA. He is Dr. Venerable Chandana. He has delivered many sermons on Bdtv on various topics. Today, it is a two-part talk. We will have the first part, and the topic of his sermon is Gaining True Freedom. Let's respectfully listen to his sermon and gain wisdom. Make sure you listen to this three-part sermon mindfully and with due devotion.
I have a question.
Yes.
Good morning. You had mentioned that the meditations wouldn't, I forget the exact wording you said, but the meditations that we do aren't going to get us to where we want. Could you explain that a little more?
Mm-hmm. Good question. The Buddha was a realist, and we're sometimes surprised to read how often people were able to attain the goal. But we neglect in the 21st century, or even centuries prior to us, that is not, the situation where so many people are able to attain the first, second, third, and fourth stages of awakening. And why is that? And the method is solid when we look at the Dhamma, the teaching. However, so much corruption has taken place. Additions of do this other thing, do this other thing, do this. If you rely on this, if you rely on chanting this sutra, for example, or this sutta, or this ritual, or do these other things almost in a, well, not almost, but in a systematic way, but rather superficially, where we're not ever just going deep enough. It's very similar to meditation. Basically is supposed to be digging, using the right tools, but digging continuously. It's like that gentleman who was given a plot of land by his very rich friend who owned a land and that had gold mine underneath the house. And this poor friend, compared to the rich, always came in and complained about his situation, being poor. And his friend gets fed up one day and he says, you know what, here's some hoes and shovels. I'm going to give you the key to my house, to my land. I'm going to come back in a month. You have everything that this land possesses, and I guarantee you there's gold underneath. So go ahead, have your fill. But in a month, I'm going to come back and take back the keys. But whatever you get during that month is yours. And the friend gets excited for 1 or 2 days and starts digging. Now, a month later, his friend comes back and he looks around. It's just like in shambles. There's one hole here, 2 holes there, 4 holes there. And he says, what did you do? And he says, well, I kept digging, but there's no gold. You lied. And he says, you're an idiot. There's gold. I told you there's gold. How far deep down did you go? He says, well, the most I've gone was about 5 feet, but I figured at 5 feet I should get something. So we're always looking for cookies. We run away from worldly pleasures, but most of us are looking for otherworldly pleasures. You can even call them jhanas, or feeling good, feeling good. That's what we're after. Well, we haven't left this scene of tug of wars. A person who's practicing the method of meditation, of satipatthana, which is impeccable in it being flawless, in taking a person to exactly where the Buddha was and his arahants experienced. However, we don't do that because we're still craving, we're still wanting to go after the pleasure. I have students who want to come in and experience the jhanas. Nothing wrong with that. But the problem is many people want to get the cookies. But those are gifts. Those are like side notes that come in. Any meditation that deserves the title of a meditation in this tradition needs to enhance one's own wisdom, whereabout the person chooses less of unwholesome actions, thoughts, speech, versus wholesome ones. So the balance rises, increases, of wholesome choices being made. And by that same token, there's less and less dukkha, suffering experienced. Many people think that Nibbana is somewhere over there in time to take place, somewhere. If I do these steps, that's where, no. Nibbana happens also in small doses, in tiny aha moments. The Buddha called them insights. That's why we also practice vipassana, which is part of the satipatthana, the mindfulness, establishing of mindfulness and going deeper in oneself. But what we do is we seek and we go after anything that is causing us pleasure. Now, the moment that student realizes that, well, the experiences I had last week, Bhante, how come they're not reoccurring? So obviously this meditation is wrong. Sounds familiar with that guy who was digging? Because of his expectations, which takes us back to sanya. And this is what I meant by also having a level of trust. But we're not blindly trusting anyone, including the Buddha. It has to make sense to us. It has to offer us something that our lives thus far have been unable to provide us with. And that's where also we need to be honest with ourselves. Because what often happens is, and this again ties in with the meditation, being needed to be correct, that takes us there. When there is a meditative practice that an individual is engaged in, if that meditation practice neglects to grant sufficient amount of importance to sila, to discipline, to moral discipline, that is not going to lead you anywhere other than just keep in a loop of ignorance, which I have seen quite a bit of. People just focus on, oh yes, I'm practicing the 10-day retreat, or I'm going this way, I'm going the 3-4 months retreat, silent retreat. Wonderful. That's good discipline, mental. But what about your morality, your ethics, your virtuous behavior? Is it there? I've sat in shock, rather. I was going to say awe, but in shock, when I've come across individuals who've been practicing for years meditation, and they don't shy away from announcing it to the world, but then suddenly they're dropping the F-bomb left and right. They're drinking wine and things like that. They're getting intoxicated. I'm like, okay, there's something wrong here. But they are meditators in their mind and in the circle. That is what I mean by wrong meditation, because it completely neglects sila, which is the first very important first step. The first training, there's 3 trainings: sila, samadhi, panya. So they want to completely forego the first one, sila, and just jump on into the samadhi, hoping that they're going to get some insights. Well, that's not, life doesn't allow us that. So how come the Dhamma is going to give us that? So we need to be very alert, and it's our responsibility to see, okay, this is what it claims to be, and let me practice. And if I'm not seeing the results, it is stupidity for me to continue doing it and expecting a different result. So how does that sound?
Yeah, I think that does sound good. And the time, like whether it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes, twice a day, once a day, that would be up to each individual and whether they see the change in their life, I suppose. You know, it's different per person, I assume.
Oh, well, there is, yes. I mean, when a person comes in and says, Bhante, I'm not able to sit more than a minute, sit a minute. And they come back and the next day they say, Bhante, I pushed and pushed and pushed and now got it to 5 minutes. I'm not going to discourage them by saying, well, that's not good. You need to have sat for 30 minutes at least. That's totally, non-constructive, to say the least. However, then my urging of them to sit more will expand to other areas of their lives, meaning, can they be able to carry that state of awareness or mindfulness in the different phases of their life, daily life?
Right.
So I would encourage them to look at their thoughts more closely. Not even, I won't even use the mind because it's too subtle for many of us. So what I do is, when you walk into a room, let's say, any room, any doorway, you're moving from your living room, from your balcony, from your porch inside into the living room area, whatever. Can you mentally be present enough to be aware as to which foot is moving in first, moving into the room or moving out of the room? That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing extravagant.
Yeah.
That way the person develops this deeper level of intimacy with this thing called mindfulness. And it's no longer becoming, as they practice, it no longer stays superficial because it's becoming part and parcel of their wakeful DNA, if you want to call it, just like where they're carrying it through their different activities. Suddenly, even in the midst of a very intense conversation, a call, let's say, suddenly they're going to notice that their heart is palpitating or they're getting agitated in the mind. Bhante didn't tell them to be mindful of that conversation, but they inevitably become. So what's happening is the bucket, if you will, of mindfulness naturally starts to increase in its content of awareness, more and more and more. And conversely, less and less quantities of sleep or completely being deluded or forcing ourselves to stay deluded about something. They're becoming less. And suddenly, the six senses that carry in information to you, whether it's flavors, sights, smells, etc., now they have a different nuance, a different texture, a depth to them suddenly. And that's when the person is actually pulling themselves away from the tug of war and coming closer and closer and closer to the midpoint, where there is less and less of that agitated state of mind. Does that help?
Oh yes. Yeah. I've noticed, starting to do that, like pay attention, not
Good.
during my official meditation sessions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm glad. And please don't hesitate from being curious as to, you know what? I'm sitting for 20 minutes. Let me try an extra minute. Because in all fairness, 20 minutes, I mean, the sitting is very important, even if it's 1 minute. However, there is a time, a bundle of time, if you will, that really makes one to go deeper if it is consistent. That's another thing. And frequent, meaning if it's 1 hour or 30 minutes a day, 30 minutes is what I'm driving at, basically. Eventually, I would get the student to go to 45 and then hover around 1 hour. But it's too much for many people. So that's why I say, well, let's start with something much less, but be curious enough to go, I wonder how it feels if I can extend it by 1 minute, by 2, by 3. Back in the day when I used to be a trainer, when I would get a person who couldn't do one single push-up, eventually I would really, encourage them this and that, and then cheer them on to get them to be curious enough to push their muscles to do a half extra. And then that half became 2. Suddenly they do 2 push-ups. They were able to do 20 and even more. So leaving a door open for the person to be, you know what, let's try. What do I have to lose? And maintaining that maintenance is extremely important in this path. So thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chandana. Hope to see you next time. Thank you for everybody's time is running. So let me explain next week, which is the July 18th, Sunday service. Dharma talk is going to give Silas Mahajan, the Nepalese teacher, is going to give a next Sunday Dharma talk. And the August, either 22nd or the 29th, either the Sunday, we are planning to do the Ulambana service, which is offering merit for the departure relative. It's going to be either last Sunday or before that Sunday. I mean, either 22 or 29 August. It's going to be outside, backyard. We provide lunch for the lay people, and for the monks, we provide the dana also. All right. Thanks for everybody. We're going to chant the page 4 and page 10. Namo tassa bhagavatu arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavatu arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhang
Saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. During passions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them all. Dharma gates are limitless. I vow to study them all. Buddha's way is supreme. I vow to attain it. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fears of fearless be. May the grieving shall weep, and the sick find help to live. May all merit be extended to everyone, that we together with all beings may gain Buddha's way. Om Nami Padme. Thank you again for everybody. Thank you, Chandana. Thank you, all the monks and Ashan, everybody, all the members. Thank you again. By the power of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, you all be well and happy. Thank you. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Now, let's have a short break and enjoy a music of wayfarers. They are devotional and full of meaningful guidelines.
from wrong, by ourselves become we pure. No one saves us but ourselves, no one can and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path, Buddhas merely show the way. La 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 No one saves us but ourselves, no one can and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path, Buddhas merely show the way.
Our next program is the Dhammapada. The Dhammapada means the path of Dharma, of truth, of righteousness, of the universal law. Buddha's teaching is an ongoing path, a way of perfection which anyone can follow to the highest good. The Dhammapada is a map for this journey. The verses of the Dhammapada can be read and appreciated simply as a philosophy, and it is a sure guide to the highest goal life can offer. Now, here is Professor Bdtv to present a brief sermon on the verse number 110 of the Dhammapada, and it is on the chapter 8.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good evening. Welcome to the Dhammapada program on Buddha Dharma TV. Today we discuss the verse number 110 on the chapter 8 or Sahasra, thousands. It begins 110th verse. Yoche vassa satham jive dussilo asamahito ekam jivitang seyo silavantasya jainu. Silavantasya jainu. A single day lived as a virtuous meditative person is greater than 100 years of life as an individual bereft of virtue and uncomposed in mind. So it's better than live 1,000 years or 100 years. A single day to live as a virtuous and meditative is greater than 100 years of life as an individual who is not virtuous and uncomposed in mind. So here the Buddha encourages us to be virtuous. Life of a virtuous person is always peaceful and calm and always blessing, because it's blissful. It is therefore important to understand that life of a virtuous person, how it will bring peace and joy and calmness to ones who is living a spiritual life, void of all bad, evil thoughts, peaceful, calm. These qualities will bring one happiness, joy, peace. So Buddha encourages us to be virtuous and to be controlled of our senses, of our speeches, of our conduct, and above all, to be in control of our mind. That's the best way to have a peaceful, calm, happy life in day-to-day life. It is also very important to understand that Buddha has always encouraged everyone to live a virtuous life. Virtuous life, to have a peace of mind, to be calm, to be happy, because that will lead us little by little to achieve our goal, reach our goal. That is to be free from all defilements. One day. But always keep in mind everything is possible, but not overnight, but little by little. But surely it will happen when we put right effort in right time. So this chapter, it's called Thousands, it talked about one by one, but few verses. There are 15 verses in this chapter, but about 7, 8 verses always one by one discuss. For example, first one says, Kusita, one who is lazy, who has is not putting any effort, and those type of people are going to be very sad. Not only sad, but also their life will be full of miserable conditions, because one who is void of a spiritual life, one who is void of these noble qualities, humanly advanced qualities, if you are void of that, we cannot be considered as a superhuman being. Buddha teaches us to come, to elevate ourselves from human level to divine level. It is by developing, practicing noble qualities. By practicing noble qualities. So, in this, Buddha talks about, in the the first one, 110th verse, it talks about Dussilo. Dussilo Asamahito Yochavasa Satam Jive Silavantasa Jaino Ekam Jivitan Seyu. That means a single day lived as a virtuous, meditative person is greater than 100 years of life as an individual bereft of virtue and uncomposed in mind. Here is Buddha discussed Jhaino, one who practices jhana, meditation. Of course, jhana, a mental repose, refers to the 4 meditative levels of mental repose of the sphere of forms. They are attained through a process of mental purification during which there is gradual, though temporary, calming down of 5-fold sense activity. 5-fold sense activity. And of the 5 obscurants or emotional disturbances that cloud the mind. The state of mind, however, is one of full alertness and lucidity. This high degree of tranquility is generally developed by practice of one or more of the 40 subjects of tranquility meditation, which of course we have to discuss one by one, but it needs careful explanation and also mindful attention of the listeners. So we do not want to discuss those things right now, but in a summary, in a nutshell, we discuss these verses. So then we discuss about the 111th verse. That is also Yochavasa Satam Jive. Duppanyo Asa Mahito. Duppanyo Asa Mahito. Ekam Jivitam Seyo Punyavantas Jain. Punyavantas Jain. This is what the 111th verse discuss about in a brief. That means a single day's life of a wise person who is aware of reality. Wise person who is aware of reality is greater than even 100 years of life of an individual who is bereft of wisdom and insight. First one said, void of what you call life, uncomposed. Next one talks about 100 years if he lives. Duppanyu, if he is not wise or unwise. And asamahito, that means fluctuating in mind, no peace of mind. So single day's life of a wise person who is aware of the reality is greater than even 100 years of life of an individual who is bereft of wisdom and insight. wisdom and insight. Two different meaning, but we can discuss later. Now, it is also important that we must touch a little bit of this, how this the jhana. One who practices jhana, the Buddha describes jhanas in 4 ways, or 5 style, but that is the Buddha described jhana like withdrawn from sensual objects, withdrawn from sensual objects, withdrawn from unwholesome states of mind. One who practices the monk enters into the first jhana, which is accompanied by vitakka, we call in Pali, which is inference, and inquiry, also called vichara, vitakka vichara. That means inference and inquiry. Filled with joy, joy means piti, and comfort, which is born of detachment. So that means vitakka, vichara, piti, sukha. These states, different states. So these are unwholesome states of mind. Withdrawn from unwholesome states of mind, the monk enters into jhana, first jhana, accompanied by inference, vitakka, vichara, inquiry, filled with joy, piti, and comfort, sukha, which is born of detachment. These things are not possible without right effort. Therefore, right effort is very important. After the fading away of joy, he dwells in equanimity, mindful, clearly conscious, and he experiences in his person that feeling of which the noble ones say, happy lives the man of equanimity and attentive mind. Thus, in this way, he enters the third absorption. We can discuss later, but for now, in a nutshell, this is what I am going to say. So if you have any question, wait for a moment. After having, so first, second, then after, you see the fading of joy, and completed, or fading away of joy, he dwells in equanimity, mindful, clearly conscious, and he experiences in his person that feeling of which the noble ones say, happy lives. Happy lives. The man of equanimity. He enters the third absorption. After having given up pleasure and pain, and through the disappearance of previous joy, that he enjoyed as a result of a second, third jhanas. And having given up pleasure and pain, through the disappearance of previous joy and grief, enters into a state of beyond pleasure and pain. beyond pleasure and pain. And the stage beyond pleasure and pain into the fourth absorption, which is purified by equanimity, which we call in Pali upekha, equanimity, and mindfulness. Then comes through the total overcoming of the perceptions of matter, however, and through the vanishing of sense reactions and the non-attention to the perception of variety, with the idea boundless is space. With the idea boundless is space. Boundless is space. He reaches the sphere of boundless space, akasanya yatana, boundless space, sphere of boundless space, and abides therein. See that? You can see that. Now into a state beyond pleasure and pain, and enters into another stage, reaches the sphere of boundless space and abides there. How this happened? You see, it is in your hand, it is in my hand. We can try and reach that level, or something to be felt, attained, and not something to be discussed. It will be verbal, only words. But when we attain to that level, it comes from our mind. What we have felt, what we have seen, what we have gained. So the state of our mind will be talking. Therefore, these four jhanas, absorption, we have to discuss separately, one by one, because to understand clearly, more accurately, and then we can see what we need to be done to reach the first, and thereby the second, and thereby the third, and thereby the fourth. A gradual. Therefore, Buddha encourages us. Thoka thokan khane khane. Little by little. You all give up. No. All give up. So-called desires, defilements. Kammaru rajataseva thoka thokan khane khane. All these so-called evil thoughts. All these evil thoughts. We give up little by little, gradually. Thereby we stay in the first stage, second stage, thereby third stage, and finally fourth stage. But that is not the end of that. Then we have to go further, to attain the first stage of Sotapanna, first stage of the enlightenment. So we have discussed all that what Buddha said was to practice this dharma, we have to develop certain qualities. This is what we call about duppanyo asamahito. Duppanyo means unwise, unsteady and fluctuating in mind. these are things that we have to give up. We have to look at it and must take into real important consideration, and thereby we get rid of them and move forward. So that's what this 110th and 111th verses discuss. But in a brief we discuss here. So this is what we discuss today, is the jhana absorptions, the first and second and third level, and the fourth level. And what is important is not to live 100 years, somebody who is not spiritual, who is lazy, and who does not practice jhana, then that life is not a real valuable life. Therefore, we have to have virtuous, meditative, during our daily life. Virtuous, to be virtuous is the foundation. Meditative is the step towards achieving, reaching this absorption level, jhanas. We discussed slowly and did my best to explain this absorption, jhanas, how to reach there. In a nutshell, I explained. We need to have more time to discuss in detail these things. But that's for today, verses number 110 and 111. May you all be blessed.
Today's program comes to a close. If you have any questions about the content or would like to share your valuable feedback, we welcome you to contact us anytime at info@buddhadharmatv.com. Our team is dedicated to spreading the Buddha's wisdom and compassion, with the sincere wish that these serene and profound teachings may reach the hearts of all those with affinity. May the unchanging light of the Buddha's wisdom guide you on the bright path of awakening and practice. Thank you sincerely for watching and being with us. May the sweet dew of the Dharma nourish your heart, bringing peace and joy. We see you again at the same time next week. Namo Buddhaya.